That's the only bad thing
A little bit of a
about live. You can't edit it. Let's see.
camera adjustment.
Yep.
Still a little. You might have to move it back.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. There we go.
That looks good.
Oh, that's better.
I probably have to angle this one. It looks like it's tipping. I think it's tipped to the side a little bit. Or like it's...
Yeah. Real professional over here, right? There we go.
Nice.
That's better, right?
I like that stand. What is it? UV size TR50?
I think so.
Nice.
We're gonna try to edit this
Yeah. But yeah, so there's getting back to the coffee hut conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, there's so many coffee huts all over the place. I mean, it's kind of crazy because me being not from Washington, but now that I live there, it's like almost every other block there's a coffee hut, and it's so cool.
Cool.
There's
Yeah.
I haven't really decided on one yet that I like.
That's your favorite?
Yeah, well, it's also like there's such a big coffee culture up there that I started looking more into it, making my own coffee and stuff. So now I have this little, just like personal espresso machine. So
Oh, cool.
I typically don't really drink just straight coffee anymore, like brewed coffee.
Right, yeah.
I like brew espresso shots, and I like get some milk and froth it in a little frother thing, and then like basically just make a latte out of it.
Right. Do you know how to do the art?
I've been really trying hard to make like a leaf. The leaf is so
Yes.
hard. It's so hard. Like this, even the simple things are really hard with that. I've gotten decent at it. There's one coffee shop that I normally get my beans from, my coffee beans, because they roast locally in Washington. It's called Valhalla Coffee Company.
Okay.
They also got a pretty cool thing. I like the Viking theme a lot. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Awesome. So you travel. So
I do.
Tell me a little bit about how you got into that.
Oof. So the traveling thing was just kind of, I had this idea that I wanted to travel. I didn't really have a dead set thing of I was gonna, out of high school, I'm gonna buy a van and go travel the U.S. or like I didn't really have a plan for that. I just knew I had some inclination of wanting to travel at some point in some aspect. I did also at the time didn't have any. This is talking about the time frame of me being in high school. I didn't have any set direction yet on whether or not I was going to college or not or anything like that, and I really didn't like the idea of going into college debt.
Yeah.
So I decided on I'm just going to go into the military, and so my grandpa did. It worked out great for him. Didn't really have an idea of a job I wanted to do in the military other than like maybe, and I think every person that goes into the Navy that's like semi-athletic is like, I want to be a Navy SEAL.
Yeah.
And that was kind of the thing I wanted to do. And I kind of was on the verge of that as a decision for a job in like 10th, 11th grade in high school. I went to my ASVAB, scored really well. I ended up qualifying for the nuclear program.
Right.
Which that's what I ended up going with. But I think from all of the options that I weighed, I thought going into the military, specifically the Navy, would give me the most travel.
Right.
And thus far it has. I definitely thought I could have got a lot more travel out of it. But I definitely got to, even just the U.S. alone, my A school was in South Carolina, so and it was on the coast too, so I did a lot of living in Charleston, South Carolina. Beautiful city.
Okay.
Beautiful city. And it's really old too. It's kind of this like old scale. I don't necessarily want to say Victorian, but there's just a lot of really old and very well taken care of homes down there. That there's a place down there called Folly Beach, huge, I guess, beach scenery, beach life.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people go down there as kind of like a vacation. That's where I used to I went and bought a surfboard at some point while I was in South Carolina and decided to go surfing. Made that kind of my full-time hobby. And it was really fun. I did that for a while. I tried to bring that hobby up to Washington when I moved, but back on the traveling thing, I was in South Carolina for a couple years, and then my first big travel trip, adventure, whatever you want to call it, was from A school, which was in Charleston, South Carolina, to my first duty station for the military, which was all the way in Washington,
Right.
of all places.
So basically, you just drove cross country.
Yeah, I did, and
Wow.
it was awesome too.
So, what was that like?
Um,
That was fun.
at first, I was like, I don't really know what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
I've never driven, I think the farthest west I had ever just even been, and I hadn't even driven that, was Mississippi at the time. So I was like, I don't know what I'm gonna do, how to make this trip, and I just thought to myself, like, okay, I'm probably just gonna sleep in my car, or like find some, or like have a buddy midway. I'd probably go stay at their place. So didn't really have a whole lot of plans, but I had about a month of time to get from A to B.
Right.
Excuse me, just had a milkshake. So packed up most of my stuff. I took all the things that I wanted to leave back here in Georgia. I did kind of like a short trip for a week back here in home in Georgia, and then drove back to South Carolina. And I think I was there for just a few days just to like finish packing up everything I wanted to take with me to Washington. And then started on my trip. And at that point, I had finally gotten plans semi-set to go up to Ohio to start with. So I just drove straight north. And most of that was, at least the initial part of it, was a night drive. I spent the first entire drive from South Carolina to Ohio. It's about I can't remember if it was a full day, if it was a 12-hour drive. I can't remember what the distance and time was, but I remember I drove the whole thing straight.
Oh, wow.
It was like one big straight drive. And I did this 2 more times.
Oh, man.
So, or 3 more times actually, because I did it twice going from Minnesota to Washington. But got up to Ohio, see my buddy Gage. I think I was there for a night. We hung out for a little bit. He was actually in A school with me. A really good buddy of mine, still is a really good friend of mine. And spent some time with him, kind of caught up. And then from there, I went to go visit a friend of mine that I had met. Very new friend at the time, ended up becoming my girlfriend for a while. But I went up to go visit her and her family. Had only planned to stay a day, but I ended up staying a week. And then at that point, we had officially started dating at that point. Just decided to make it a long distance relationship thing.
Right, sure.
And that worked out pretty well for the 2 years that we were in the relationship, or a year and a half. But from Minnesota, which is very cold, by the way, I think it's a complete understatement when somebody says that Minnesota is the coldest
Right.
state in the U.S.
Man.
It's a complete understatement because there's cold, and then there's, like on the west coast, the water's not just cold, it's like bone chilling cold. So like you can't go in the west coast water and not have a wetsuit on unless it's like San Diego.
Right.
That's as far south as you can get on the west coast.
Okay.
And in Minnesota, it's like that cold where it's like bone chilling, but that's what the air temperature is like
Oh,
in
okay.
the winter. So like I went and visited my girlfriend at the time. Went and visited her and her family for Christmas when it was winter in Minnesota. So cold, man. It was I had never experienced anything like that, and I don't think I'd probably ever live there just because of that. Like maybe if it warmed up a little bit, but I don't think the whole global warming thing's gonna warm up that quick.
Probably not, no.
It was very cold. It was, I think it was like -15, -20, somewhere around in there. Yeah, it was. But I did get to go ice skating on a lake for the first time there, and drive a snowmobile for the first time there.
Now that is real ice skating right there.
It was really fun. But yeah, spent about a week there, on that trip. This is looping back to the traveling. And then from Minnesota, I drove west out to Montana. I ended up staying, like just sleeping in my car. Or was it in my car? No, I took an Airbnb that time. Found an Airbnb, got that for the night in Montana. I think I was in Bozeman, Montana.
Okay.
That whole stretch from Minnesota to Montana was not very fun of a drive. I will say that. North Dakota, driving through all of that, eastern Montana, it's nothing but fields.
Oh, really? Kind of like Kansas, right?
Yeah, it's just fields, straight roads, not a whole lot going on. And I think that was the first time I got to see wind turbines, or turbines, or however they're called. Very cool to see in person for the first time. Now I drive by them and it's like, oh, it's a wind farm.
Yeah.
So, but it's really cool to see that. And then from Montana, I drove. I can't remember if I got an I got an Airbnb in Spokane, Washington. So it's just on the other side of Idaho. And this was probably my most favorite part of the trip that I drove. And keep in mind, I was driving a 2-wheel drive Jeep at the time, Renegade. So not the best vehicle to be taking.
Yeah.
Thankfully, I didn't break down, but there was a couple times where I decided I was going to go off on a detour, on a little excursion, and found myself almost stuck.
We think about Jeeps. You think about them being durable and you can get
especially
anywhere
for
you want.
off-road stuff. I know, it was like the first. This isn't me trying to hate on the Jeep brand because I do like Jeeps.
Yeah.
But it's the first Jeep I think and it was a Renegade. It was the first Jeep I'd ever seen that was 2-wheel drive, and it was super nice. It was like a limited, had like white leather, orange accents on the inside of it, all the branding. It was really cool. But it was like the first Jeep I'd ever had that was 2-wheel drive, and I'm like, this isn't gonna help me. I ended up selling that vehicle and buying a 4-wheel drive Kia SUV. Later because I wanted to make sure I had a 4-wheel drive, especially living in the Pacific Northwest. Pretty much every vehicle up there is 4-wheel drive, unless it's like a commuter car. Most of them, even then, have 4-wheel drive.
Right.
But the Montana to Spokane, Washington, so eastern Washington, definitely my favorite. I liked the Montana mountains. They were very cool. But it's kind of a weird thing too, because typically, I even know down here, like the mountains, they kind of gradually, you'll go from like kind of flat land and then to some rolling hills, and then you'll go into a little bit steeper mountains. In Montana, it's like flat plains and it's a giant mountain.
Right.
It's like sticking out in the middle of nowhere.
Yep.
And then once you kind of get further into the mountain range in western Montana, you kind of hit the big like inner pass in the mountains, and that was a really pretty drive. From there, I ended up getting into Idaho. I think that was the first or second hike I'd taken on that trip thus far.
Wow.
The first hike I took was up to what they call the Big M in Montana. It's literally just this kind of like a face of I don't even want to call it a mountain compared to what I've seen now as mountains, but it's like a big hill. Mountain that has like a big M on it.
Yep.
Went and hiked up to the top of it, and it was a really pretty view. The second hike I took was in Idaho, and this was kind of a last minute hike. I wasn't really planning on taking it because I was kind of early on my trip getting to Spokane already. So I was like, my ETA was gonna be like 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and I was like, I might as well like detour something because I didn't want to spend 8 hours in a hotel. It's like I need something to do. I've been locked up in a car for this whole trip for the most part, which has been very pretty, but I had just not done a whole lot. And then I decided to take a hike. I found this detoured hike. I don't even remember what the name of it was, but it was just right off the highway and kind of like the northern little strip of Idaho. And probably was one of the prettiest hikes I've done. Not the prettiest thus far, but definitely out of the Idaho hikes I've done.
Right.
this definitely has been the prettiest. It was pretty much all snow. It was like a foot or 2 feet of snow at the time, and I had taken the hike up. And there wasn't a whole lot of traffic on that. I think I'd seen 2 other people on the trail, and I did 2 hours up. I ended up seeing like elk prints for the first time there. I also seen some. I don't think it was cougar or mountain lion, but it was some like big paw print of some sort. I started to get a little freaked out and panicky at that point. I was like, okay, now I'm up in the mountains, kind of by myself, and by myself. But it was like the first time in Idaho, and it was like, I really don't want to not make it out of this hike. So it was a little scary at that point. Once I started seeing tracks of animals that wasn't common to me, especially growing up in Georgia. I think we've had like 2 mountain lion sightings around here my entire life growing up here.
So let's talk about your prettiest hike here in a minute.
Okay, yeah.
Now
that would have been.
But first,
okay.
For those of you that don't know, this is Hiking with Cam, right?
Yes.
This is just crazy. Literally, what, 2-3 weeks ago we met?
Yeah, just you reached out to me over TikTok, and it was kind of a random thing because it was just like.
Exactly. Now tell everybody how you're right here presently.
Oh,
because this is so awesome.
Yeah, it was kind of surreal. Like I grew up here randomly. Well, not randomly, I grew up here, but it was just random that he had contacted me, and I was 2 weeks out from flying home. Especially me being in the Pacific Northwest, where you see a lot of your better hiking videos, I want to say. All the ones that are just like the really moody hiking weather, any of the like super gorgeous like mountain peak views when you're like up on top of the mountain. A lot of those come from the Pacific Northwest, or even just north of there in Canada. But yeah, that's I really haven't even started posting hiking videos until I had started that whole trip. And I've only posted a few of them, but it's just like I'll take little shots here and there, and I just kind of blended them together. It keeps getting phone calls.
I know it.
But yeah, my prettiest hiking trip was Mount Rainier.
That is in Washington?
Yeah, it's in Washington. I think it's the largest mountain in or the largest mountain in Washington is Mount Rainier. I could be wrong about that. But yeah, my girlfriend at the time, I think it was about 6 months into dating, she decided to move out there to work as like a summer job in Mount Rainier. And then I'd go and visit her. At the time I was living in Bremerton, Washington, stationed on the naval base there. And I drive down to see her every week, every 2 weeks. It'd be like an hour and a half, 2 hour drive down. Well, it's like an hour drive just to the base of the mountain, but driving from the base of the mountain to the top, because it's just very windy and very slow all the way up. It was like another 45 minutes to an hour to drive. But my prettiest hike there was, I can't remember. I always get the name kind of messed up, but it's like Sunrise Peak or something like that, or Sunrise Point. And the reason I say it's the prettiest is because it's kind of the most like, I don't want to say unrealistic view you could think of, but it's just so surreal, because a lot of the Pacific Northwest, the general atmosphere just gives it this like moody vibe. Everything's typically like dark, overcast, foggy. Well, a lot of that's, you got a lot of cloud coverage. Well, at some point when you get to a certain elevation, you just stop. Like the clouds just don't come up as much. So we did this hike. It was called Sunrise Peak or Sunrise Point, and I had not heard of this hike before. My girlfriend at the time had heard about it being a really good hike with some of her friends, and they were like, "It's kind of a weird hike though. Like we got to go with like headlamps at like 4 a.m. So this is already kind of a crazy thing. We get there and it's still dark, like the moon and the stars are still out, and or at least I think, I don't remember at the time, but it's like really dark. So we put on headlamps and start our hike, and we get about halfway or 3/4 of the way up, and it's just, you're starting to just get that glow over the mountain, and we eventually make it pretty close to the top, and you could have gone a little bit higher, but I think everyone that we were with was fine, just right where we were.
Right.
Because we got to a point where it's like you have this little bit of a peak, and it kind of slopes down, where you can kind of like look over right where the crest of that is at the bottom. And when you look over it, it's literally just a straight drop down, like a 200-foot just cliff face right down below you. It's kind of funny. One of the ladies that we brought with us to go hike, we didn't know this at the time, but she's scared of heights.
Oh no.
So we get up there, and she looks over, and she's just like starts losing it. She's like, I don't know if I can do this. I don't want to go any higher now. I was like, that's fine. It's completely fine. Eventually, the sun starts to rise, like it actually starts to poke up over the horizon, and you just get this gorgeous view of just like the different discoloration of the sky. Because similar to like when you have sunset, it's like a very orangish
right
sky. You get something similar, but it's like more of like a purplish blue sky, kind of over the horizon. And on top of that, because of all the clouds in the Pacific Northwest, you just have like a blanket of clouds that's under you. So all you see is just this beautiful sunrise over like an ocean of clouds, with this like few different like peaks of mountains just sticking up here and there. It's so cool. That's definitely got to be one of my most favorite.
Yeah.
It's almost like How to Train Your Dragon. Like,
there you go. Exactly.
It almost like as pretty as that is awesome.
You see, now I tell a story that my grandmother, who lives literally right across the street from me, used to be over the singles ministry at Meadowbrook, the church that we all went to go at the time.
Okay.
Well, we all went to, for the singles group, we went to Gatlinburg.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And there was no use in sleeping in because Mitch, the cook, he was deaf, and he talked like this. He said, "Hey, everybody, how are you doing?" You know. So, but I would always, wake up and I'd help him cook and stuff, and we'd go out on the porch and drink coffee. Well, one morning, it was cool. Everything was cooked, finished, and me and Mitch went on the porch and looked out, just like what you said. It was like
just like an ocean of clouds.
An ocean of clouds. It was.
That's awesome.
The most astounding thing that I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's awesome. I think, and like I've been on the ocean. I definitely think if I had to pick between the two, like people always like, would you rather live in the mountains or the beach? Like, I think that's the thing we always grew up talking about, and I think the mountains have kind of won me over at this point.
Right.
But yeah, it's especially with now that I've kind of transitioned off of surfing from the East Coast, because I tried doing it on the West Coast.
Right. Now, let's talk about your surfing. That's pretty cool. What?
So I didn't grow up surfing.
Yeah, sure.
So, let's fix my sock real quick. I didn't grow up surfing, but I did have a friend that took me wakeboarding one time. And I had another friend that his dad had a pontoon boat. And I had a surfboard. I had an interest in it, so my parents eventually went and bought me like a cheap used surfboard.
Right.
And I brought it back with me, and anytime I'd go over to his lake house spot or whatever, and we'd go behind the pontoon boat, and we'd try to do surfing then.
Right.
It was kind of like my first time being on a surfboard.
So cool.
And it was when I hit Charleston, South Carolina for A school in the military, I picked it up full time. I was like, that was my hobby then. Got pretty decent at it for what small waves were there. Because there really wasn't a lot. There's not a whole lot of waves on the East Coast. It's pretty shallow, or not shallow, but just like mellow waves.
Right.
So we went, when you're in Folly Beach in Charleston, South Carolina, there's like a pier there. which they've kind of added some barriers now. They don't let a whole lot of people surf right next to the pier like they used to. But
Okay.
I don't know the mechanics behind it, but just right there where the pier is, for whatever reason, the waves like build up a lot bigger right there at the pier. So we kind of surf right next to the pier.
Cool.
Not up under it, but definitely like right next to it. Kind of get some bigger waves. I think the biggest waves I had ever surfed were only like 3 or 4 feet at the most. Not too big, definitely not anything to be like up in like a bowl of a wave or anything.
Right.
But it was really cool. I fell in love, I think, with the idea of just, and I'm kind of taking this from one of my favorite movies growing up as a kid. That's probably where my inspiration of surfing came from, but the movie Surf's Up. It was like a not very popular movie, but with like the little penguins in it.
Yep.
And there's a line in the movie where they talk about there's just surreal feeling with just being weightless and hovering above the water. And once I had figured out how to, paddle and pop up on my board
Yes.
and just kind of get on my board and be on the wave and not fall off after the first like half second, and I could actually like hold myself on, was like some of the first few times I was like, okay, I'm literally floating on the ocean.
Right.
Like, this is the coolest thing ever. And I just got addicted like that.
Heck yeah.
Like a mix of the adrenaline and just that feeling was awesome.
Now, is surfing kind of like skateboarding?
It can be, in a sense. So there's like, I think it'd be a little bit more closely related to like longboarding. Where,
Oh,
like,
okay, yeah.
it's like with the skateboard, I know a lot of skateboarders, they'll try to like just pop up the front of their board and just kind of shift their whole weight
Right.
to a completely different direction real quick. With longboarding, you typically don't do that. You lean into it pretty heavy
Right.
to steer. I think longboarding on a skateboard is a lot like surfing in the sense of you have to put a lot of like lean into it.
Right.
It's still kind of there's like a forward foot leading type of thing. It's not so much both of your feet. Well, both of your feet still do move at the same time, but it's almost kind of like the front of your body kind of tracks with the back end of your body.
Right.
Longboarding is a little bit different than shortboarding when it comes to surfing, whereas like you have a little bit more control with the shortboard. A longboard I like just because it's a little bit more free flowing for surfing. Plus you can kind of do this cool thing. You've probably seen it before, but where like they'll get up on the wave and be on their board, but then they'll start kind of like walking the board up under their feet, out from under them.
Right.
I had finally figured out how to do that kind of near the end of my time in South Carolina, and that was really cool. And then I tried to pick it up and keep it going in Washington, and it was way too cold. I had finally found a decent spot for waves in Washington. It's almost Oregon, but it was like a 2.5, 3 hour drive from where I was at to Westport. And they have what's called, actually I didn't know it at the time, they have this thing called a jetty.
Right.
Where it's just a bunch of rocks that they've placed to just kind of keep from the waves washing them, so boats can kind of come in and out of a canal there. Well, kind of the same thing that the pier did or does in South Carolina, where like it'll just build up right there. And there's a lot of really good surfers out there in Westport that would just get up there on the wave, and right there were some massive waves too. Like the waves there could get up to like 10, 12 feet if there was a huge tide coming in. And I got a little scared at one point. I had a couple incidences where I didn't necessarily drown, but I got held under some big waves for quite a little bit longer than I had liked to.
Oh no.
And between that and it being cold, I kind of set myself up for just kind of, all right, I think I'm going to cap it out at 6 foot waves. That's all I'm doing. And then I kind of started looking at other ideas for hobbies. And I kind of started talking to some people about snowboarding because it was pretty big in the area. And we had a guy that was kind of pushing for all of us as like a division. At the time in the military, was really pushing for us to all kind of go as a group.
Right.
Everyone get our like season pass, and it
Sure.
was a smart thing for us at the time too, because season passes where you get like unlimited use were like $800, and being active military at the time, it was $150.
Right.
It was like a 90% discount. Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, it was really good. So I ended up getting my season pass pretty early before the season even started, and then started looking at getting some just cheap used snowboard gear. Like, I don't know if I'll actually do this or not. I had tried snowboarding once in, I think it was Gatlinburg or Pigeon Forge, Tennessee. They have a place that they're called Ober Gatlinburg.
Mm-hmm.
And just as a kid, I was like, I want to go try snowboarding because I think it's cool. And absolutely just destroyed my body.
Oh, no.
It was such a bad experience for snowboarding. I definitely didn't turn it away though as an option. But yeah, that first trip when I was a kid, I did what they call scorpioning. And I did it on my last run too. I had pretty much decided I was going to do this last run and be done. And sure enough, they had the snow machines on. I couldn't see very well, and I hit something. I probably, now that I've snowboarded some, I kind of know how it feels. I think at the time I just caught an edge, and I just rolled. And when I did, my back legs kind of came up behind me and hit myself in the back of the helmet. Had I not been wearing a helmet, I probably would have gashed the back of my head open. And I've still done that a few times. Not as bad as I did then, I don't think, but I was also smaller, so it probably just hurt a lot more.
Yeah.
But yeah, I picked up snowboarding, and I think I've still yet to decide if I like snowboarding more than surfing, but kind of in a similar way. And I'll say this more for snowboarding in what they call powders. There's just freshly fallen, just loose snow.
Right.
Just multiple feet of that. Snowboarding in that is a lot like surfing.
Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely like that a lot. And I've also just this past, because I've now been snowboarding for 2 years.
Okay.
This upcoming season will make my 3rd season snowboarding, and I think it very quickly transitioned from what little bit of skateboarding I did and what little bit of surfing I did has transitioned very well to snowboarding.
Right.
So this past season, I didn't go as much as I did the first season, but I've already started doing jumps, board grabs, just kind of some airtime stuff. I hit the park once, didn't really land anything. It's everyone's first time in the park. Anything you try, you're just gonna absolutely eat it. But yeah, I'm hoping and this is me being probably a little too pushy, but I would like to try to get in a flip by the end of the season. A backflip, very unintentional backflip maybe, but just something like that would be cool. But yeah, I'm really hoping snowboarding, I can get a lot better at that this upcoming season. I think that'll be really fun. And definitely some of my prettier views have also been up on the mountaintops. After right after you get off of a lift, you're kind of at the mountain peak and see the sun kind of coming over. It's also really pretty.
Yeah.
I love it. I love the mountains so much.
Have you ever been Southwest? Like Texas?
So I don't think it really counts as being in Texas. I had a layover in Texas.
Okay.
So I've physically been in Texas, but I've never actually visited any place there.
Cool.
I'll
What
say-
about Grand Canyon and
No, I
Las
haven't.
Vegas, California?
The only place I've been was San Diego.
Ooh.
For the short time I was in the military.
What was that like, San Diego?
Is
Is it as extravagant as?
It can be. I will say there is a huge variety of culture and things you can do in San Diego. I know I personally wasn't much of a nightlife person.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I probably could have went out and done some other cool stuff. They have escape rooms there. They have all your typical touristy location things, laser tag. But I think most of the stuff I did was just whatever my friends wanted to do.
Yeah.
I had a couple things that I had my own endeavors for. I did try to go surfing there, and I busted my lip open pretty bad. And I probably should have known better. I went down there. This is only, I think, my second time going to San Diego, and I went and got a longboard for San Diego waves, which, for those who don't know, the waves on the West Coast are a lot more aggressive than East Coast waves, which are also larger, but they just physically like travel towards the coast a lot faster too. Not like a significant amount, but they do move faster. So with that, they tend to like pick up and like crash over and bowl a lot faster too. Well, I had a longboard. I don't know why I rented a longboard. I should have just got a shortboard. But I got a longboard and did not catch a single wave in San Diego.
Oh no.
I like crashed over and over and over. I was like, I'm gonna get it eventually, and I eventually got to what one wave was a little bit bigger, and it crashed over me, and I like ate my surfboard into my lip and busted my lip open. I was so mad about it. And yeah, then that was the only time I went surfing in San Diego or even on the West Coast without a wetsuit. And then other than that, a lot of the things that I did in San Diego was we went to different coffee shops down there. They had one coffee shop that was just like a very like utopian theme. Like everything was super clean, glass, all white, sharp cut corners. It was very kind of odd to even be in there because it was like super fancy looking, but also just very futuristic. That was a really cool coffee shop. I wish I could remember the name of it, but we did that. We went to what they call an arcade bar. I don't know if they have them here, but it's just a bar that has a bunch of old arcade machines.
Okay.
This one's pretty popular. It's called Coin Op in San Diego. And that was pretty cool. I think we went there twice, and it was really fun. And then other than that, I usually like chose to go with the groups that were going to end up going to the beach at some point throughout the day. One of the trips down there, I did meet my buddy from South Carolina. Went down there and met him. He was on I think Eisenhower.
Mm-hmm.
No, Carl Vinson. Went down there and seen him, and then we did a lot of walking around, and just kind of like sightseeing, because there's a lot in San Diego. I mean, not even just downtown San Diego, but the island that the naval base is on down there, Coronado. There's a lot of things even just there to do. And I think if I ever moved to San Diego, or even Southern California, Coronado Island would be the place that I would want to live. Cool. It's a little bit more, I say a little bit more expensive, it's a lot more expensive, but it's probably the most family-oriented place I think I've seen for that area. Even in the last 5 to 10 years, I think it's the first public park that I've seen where you would actually just have people out, like families out with their kids and stuff, and everyone's just enjoying life and just don't have to worry about kidnappers or anything like that, and everyone's just kind of going about and doing their thing. And
Right.
it's just awesome to see. It's the first time I've seen that in a long time.
Wow.
But yeah, San Diego is pretty cool. I've been there, I think, a total of 4 or 5 times.
Okay. Wow.
All of which was me being in the Navy and us doing trips down there. But that was pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely. The one thing that I would love to do is start getting into serious traveling.
Okay.
But
I mean, you're talking about like van life?
oh, well, I don't know about that, but
yeah, it's
what are some pointers? For example,
okay.
whenever you went cross country, do you remember how much you spent on gas and food? And
A lot.
That's what I was kind of afraid of.
So I definitely think it depends on the lifestyle you're living if you're on the road. Because I've met people who are on the road full time. I just met a couple here recently, some very good Christian family, Matt and Erica, that they play music going from place to place, and they're on the road full time with 5 kids. So they're making it work. They've been doing it for solid 2.5 years. Right at the height of COVID, they started of all times.
Yeah.
Right, but that's what they felt God was calling them to do, and they did it, and they've been successful with it thus far.
That's awesome.
So you know, you could go buy, and I think it kind of breaks down to like what equipment you get and you take with you.
Right, right.
So like if you just live out of a car and you're traveling full time, you're going to be spending a lot on you're going to be spending a lot on gas either way. Probably the less amount if it's just like a car.
Right.
But nonetheless, you're probably going to be spending a lot on gas. If you have like an SUV you're trying to live out of, you're probably going to have a lot less room to like put things. So then you have to start accounting for storage.
Right.
And I know when it comes to like your sleeping arrangement versus storage, if you decide that you want to travel full time and you want to do it with whatever SUV you have, you're probably more likely going to be tent camping a lot or Airbnb, which Airbnbs can get expensive real quick.
Yeah.
Tent camping could be an option, but I wouldn't recommend it long term.
Oh yeah.
Now, if you were to go like a step up from that and say you wanted to go full time in just a van, I think if you're just by yourself, this is something I've considered, was just living out of a van full time, especially if the music mixing and sound tech stuff that I'm trying to do goes full time.
That'd be awesome.
I'd probably go on the road full time if I can. Just because I've seen a lot of need for that. But in even considering that, like I personally would probably want to go and live out of a van full time. Not like a little Chevy, utility van, but more of like a Ford or Mercedes Sprinter van, something that's got a little bit more height to it.
Kind of like the Mystery Machine.
Yeah, or a little bit bigger than that, but yeah. But definitely something that has a little bit more room for sleeping accommodations and something you could put a stove in. Maybe you could actually like have decent meals other than just freeze-dried food or Taco Bell every other day.
Yeah.
Taco Bell's my favorite.
Oh really?
Yeah, especially, and I think I like it a lot because it's just getting off subject here a little bit, but I like Taco Bell a lot just because it's I understand Taco Bell's not Mexican food or Hispanic food in any sort of fashion, but I think it's kind of close or similar to like its own, I guess you could call it American spin-off of Mexican food.
Plus it's cheap.
Yeah, that's the other thing, it's cheap.
Yeah.
Not only is it cheap, but it's like it's something I can eat cold or warm. I know a lot of people are like, you can't eat cold burritos. It's like, I think it tastes good. So like I'll go get like 3 or 4 beefy 5 layers for a snow trip day.
Heck yeah.
If I'm going snowboarding, I'll have one when I'm going up there, I'll have another for lunch, and I'll probably have another on the way back, and I'll have an extra in case I get hungry.
Yeah.
But yeah, I probably should not eat so much Taco Bell. I love Taco Bell though. But yeah, so like if you're living out of a van, definitely having even just a small stove makes a huge difference for your ability to cook your own food and meals, because that can be a lot cheaper. Having even just a little mini fridge on that, your own like mini shower. My parents just bought a pop-up camper. It was something cheap, something they can just kind of take kind of wherever. And it has this little thing that I've also seen in vans where it's just a little bitty kind of shower, kind of toilet thing.
Okay,
combo.
yeah, for sure.
And it has like a little shower curtain that's in a small little square. Granted, you don't have the wiggle room or the ability to just like stretch your arms out in your shower or anything like that, but just the capability of having a shower, toilet, stove, place to sleep all in the same, moving vehicle, that makes a huge difference. Really, unless it's like that, or a Class C motorhome, I think would probably be the best ways to go when it comes to going like full time. And it's just myself. So like this couple that I met recently, they live out of a Class A motorhome, which is kind of like your, if you think of like a motorhome that a lot of people that are full-time bands on tour, most of the time that's what they have is a Class A motorhome, whether it's mostly for storage or whatever. That's typically what you'll see is a Class A, just the big rectangular Class C motorhome. People can go look this up too, but Class C's and vans that are well organized, I think, would be the best options for someone who's single trying to do it full time.
Right.
The only thing I would have to consider is, like, I have a dog, which for most people that I've talked to and saying they don't have an issue having a dog going with them full time either. But that would be just something else I have to consider. But yeah, I think when it comes to, and I've seen people do it with school buses too, when you're trying to do any type of, I don't really say out of the blue, but just kind of completely different take on a vehicle, whether it's a school bus, or you're trying to take a truck and make it into an overlanding truck and kind of live out of it full time. I've seen people do that too. Those can be good. Sometimes can be cheaper, but if you're talking about like a truck, typically it doesn't. Typically ends up being more costly. But I've seen people do, like, take just about any type of van and convert it. A lot of that just comes from creativity, your general understanding of construction materials. If you're trying to make one your own, I think watching a lot of DIYs on other people's helps. That's what a lot of what I do. If I'm trying to learn something, which I'll probably start doing here soon, is watching DIYs on people's vans. But YouTube has been
a lifesaver.
Yeah, I think it's basically turned into this generation's like modern library. It's like if you want to know something, you know, it's very easy to Google who's in that industry and probably find a podcast of them or something like this.
Yeah.
Where they'll talk to you about, you know, whatever it is, whether it's their profession or their ideas or opinions on something that could probably help you out.
Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, that's kind of the way I would go if I were to do it full time. And that's still something that I'm just freshly thinking about. That's probably the way I would go about it.
Sounds pretty. In theory, it sounds easy.
Well, most things do.
Sounds fun too.
Most
Yeah.
things do in theory. They sound easy, but I know I found out the hard way. A lot of that. I think it's what you make of it too. It's I think if you attack something with the idea that you're going to, you have like a goal in mind and you know 100% sure that you want to finish it with this goal in mind, that you're going to do it. And I think a lot of that comes from my own personal drive and ambition.
Right.
But yeah, when I set my mind to something, I go for it pretty hard for the most part, unless it's something that's completely new and I've just never had any like relation to it at all before.
Right.
And I'll probably have some hesitation going into it, but anything like music related, you know, boards, I say board sports because I've done skating, surfing, and now snowboarding.
Wow.
But like any type of board sports related thing, I think I would probably go into it a little bit faster. One thing I haven't done yet with board sports as a thing is it's like downhill longboarding. I don't know what the specific term of it's called, but you'll see boards or guys on these cruiser boards is what the term of the skateboard is called. And they'll have these hand pads with they basically use them like brakes.
Oh, okay.
And they'll go down.
I think I know what we're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, like a large mountain, windy road, and they'll even like just kind of spin their board out sideways up under them for a second to kind of brake themselves. Kind of similar to what you do with snowboarding. You kind of like switch your board sideways, kind of brake a little bit. But yeah, that would probably be the next thing I would do. It's kind of one of the last things to do, I guess, other than just going to a skate park for like, I guess, trick skateboarding, if that's the proper term. Yeah. Most people just call it skateboarding, or just having a standard skateboard. I've been to a skate park 5 times in my life with an actual skateboard and have just completely ate it every single time. Busted my butt, hurt my wrist. And maybe I'm probably just a baby when it comes to getting hurt trying to do activities like that, but surfing hasn't been too bad in that respect.
Yeah.
I think anyone who's trying to get into a board sport and they're worried about getting hurt, I think surfing's probably the easiest, especially if you're starting on small waves, because it's just water. Like,
Right, yeah.
you can go, and I've been behind a boat where I'm going 20, 30 mile an hour and I fall off. Like, it's not that painful. Like, it's just a bunch of water.
Yeah.
Um,
Sure beats concrete.
yeah, right. And even snow, as long as it's not packed down snow where it's almost like icy, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Even like snow is pretty forgiving when it comes to falling. So I think because of that, especially on days where it's more powder and just fresh snow,
Right.
I've kind of pushed myself a lot into trying to do jumps and get air time and just trying to take certain runs faster. There was a point, not this past season, but my first season, we're kind of near the end of the year. But me and a friend of mine were picking snowboarding up pretty well. We were getting real good at just taking slopes pretty quick, turning real well, and we decided to start racing at the end. And we never got in trouble by ski patrol or anything, but we didn't never really run into anyone. My buddy Kay, he ran into some people every once in a while. That's just because people were, you got people who are just kind of just moving sideways across the slope when they're not paying attention
Right.
to the run. I mean, he would try to avoid them and still would end up hitting someone. But there'd be, most of the time whenever one of us would wipe out, even if I'm going super fast down the slope, if it's like a groom slope, eventually what happens is you'll just lose traction. Like if I'm on my heels, I'll just end up basically just sitting down. I'll still be going fast, but I'll just basically just be butt sliding
Right, yeah.
across the snow, going real fast.
That's cool.
Even same thing if I'm like on my toes, if it's groomed and I'm going real fast, there's not a whole lot of bumps, and I just kind of lose traction. I'll probably just be like laying on my stomach and going down
I bet
the
that's fun.
slope backwards. Yeah, just going for it. But yeah, I really like snowboarding. It probably has become my favorite board sport. Still kind of, like I said, kind of indecisive still between surfing and snowboarding as to which
Right.
one's my favorite. Because I haven't went back to surfing. I was going to try to go surfing while I was here this weekend, but there was like a tropical storm, hurricane thing going on in the Gulf of Mexico right now, so it was like, didn't really want to chance it.
Right.
But
Now you mentioned earlier something that I kind of want to touch on real quick.
Yeah.
The what was ice skating on the frozen ice lake?
on the pond,
What was that like?
ice skating's kind of weird. It's its own thing. Like
Was it kind of?
I've rollerbladed and roller skated before, and it's really just kind of its own thing.
Well, I mean, skating on like a frozen solid pond. What was that like?
It's, I don't know how to describe it. It's almost similar in a fashion of, well, it's not really like surfing in the sense of you're going forward, like square with your body, versus kind of going sideways.
Right. Yes.
But you're still kind of weightless almost. If you got some speed going on the ice, you almost kind of feel weightless. Where like you can just glide pretty far.
Right. Yeah, I see.
Without stopping. When it comes to stopping, it's a little weird. I've seen my girlfriend at the times, her ice skates had these little like stopper things on the front, similar to like roller skates. But a lot of people also just kind of, I guess what you call brake check.
Oh
Just
yeah.
kinda,
Okay.
like turn your skis out, or the blades of your
Right.
not skis, but the blades of your ice skates out, and just kind of like scratches the surface and
Right.
breaks you. But yeah, it was. I mean, I've heard the stories of people like falling into pond. I think I wasn't too worried about it because it was a pond. It's not a river,
Right.
so there's no like flowing water under it. So if I was to break through, I'm just worried about hypothermia. And the house is like, a minute and a half walk, if that.
Right,
If I'm cold and trying to get out of the pond.
Right.
So it's like, there wasn't really any like death risk, but definitely just like risk of falling in was a little concerning. It was,
Yeah,
it's
I
already,
bet that was kind of sketchy.
it's already negative 15, negative 20 out, and we're ice skating. And then maybe my first time, I was like, it's fine. We've done this every single year. I was like, okay, I trust you.
Yeah.
So we go out there. We initially had to blow some snow off.
Oh yeah.
But once we got the snow off and all of that, we went out and ice skated around. And then something that was kind of interesting is when the ice cracks, it'll still crack on you here and there. And when it does, it's not like a risk of it falling in or anything. But some of the cracks, you'll like hear them go like across the pond. It'll just kind of almost sound like a low thunder, like going across the pond. It's really cool. But yeah, I didn't know. I didn't really get too hurt ice skating. I didn't give myself enough speed or push myself enough to really get hurt in any sense of, especially not like I would get hurt skateboarding.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say I didn't like it, but it wasn't like an interesting thing to me.
Maybe not something you might want to do every day.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it was good.
Cool. Now, we'll end on this. Tell everybody about your TikTok. Is it channel or program?
So
TikTok.
I just kind of have a
platform.
Yeah, I just kind of have like a small platform on TikTok of just like the hiking videos that I've done. And I've done a lot less over the last few years. Well, really all I've done is over the last few years, but I guess over the last year or last 6-7 months, I've not done a whole lot of hiking. My most recent one was a couple months ago. I had taken a hike to Oregon, which it was for a business trip was why I was there. Sometimes my work will send me out to different places in the Pacific Northwest region. And from there, if there's a hike nearby that seems cool, I have the All Trails app. I'll find something on there.
Okay, cool.
That's kind of like where I find my hikes is All Trails. So I found a hike that I thought I would like, and I went and hiked on it. It was really pretty. I definitely started too late though, so I kind of got there, got to the initial mountain. It was really more like a hill, kind of like hilltop.
Yeah.
Right when the sun was starting to kind of set.
Mm-hmm.
And I finished the hike right when the sun was setting. So, and it was about a 2-hour hike, so the whole hike back was just like dark. So it was a little scary, but I guess eventually my eyes were like adjusting as it was setting. Right. So there wasn't any time where I was like lost. But yeah, I think that was my most recent hike. I definitely want to start hiking some more, especially while fall's starting to pick up.
Right. Oh yeah.
Yeah. So hikes will be really pretty. The temperature won't be super hot. The only thing I have to be concerned about, I would have been concerned about is like glaciers melting off.
Oh.
Especially.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah.
Kind of every year now, there's been a report after report of Mount Rainier's glacier melting off a little bit more at a time. So there's not so much flooding at this point, or just runoff and landslides and stuff like that. There's not as much of a concern at this point, I don't think. But once fall starts rolling around, starts getting a little colder, I'm sure we'll probably have our first snowfall sometime in even November, just kind of like some dustings in the like top of the mountains where it pretty much always snows if it's cold enough. Mm-hmm. I'll probably go get some hikes in towards that time frame, which will probably be within the next month and a half.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, man, it's I can't wait for fall. I'm such I guess like a sucker for fall clothes and the season and the drinks and the smells. The only thing I think I've liked better than that is when Christmas rolls around.
Right. From October to December is my favorite time of year.
nice and cool. I'm already wearing my fall clothes. I'm like,
Yep, there you go, yeah.
layering up already.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't wait for it.
Now, how far away do you live from Coeur d'Alene, Idaho?
So Coeur d'Alene was pretty close to where I was here not too long ago. I did another hike here not too long ago in Spokane. I didn't really, I don't know if I recorded anything when I was there, because that hike I don't think was that interesting.
Right.
Right now I'm getting my hikes backwards. That was the one that I just recently did with the mountain peak. That one was in Spokane. The one that I did in Oregon was at an area called Three Sisters, and there was a waterfall there when I hiked. The waterfall was really cool, and I took a video and photo of that, but the hike itself wasn't that interesting. But yeah, the place I was at in Spokane, Washington wasn't too far from Coeur d'Alene. I had a job one of the days I was over there for my work trip was in Post Falls, Idaho.
Okay.
And it's a pretty area out there.
Yeah.
I've driven through Coeur d'Alene, kind of stopped at the downtown district, I guess. It's not very big. It's
Right.
kind of its own little quaint thing, but still nonetheless very pretty unique. I like it. I kind of said in the past that I'd probably like to move to Coeur d'Alene, especially where the college district is and the canal where all the boats are on the lake. That's a pretty area right there. It's also very expensive to live out there.
Well, I've heard my friend Jason lives up there.
Yeah, and I was talking to one of the locals there too. It's kind of crazy now that a lot of people are moving out from California and even now moving away from Washington. Just because either the house that they've had over the years has gained so much asset value that they sell their house and make double what they've been paying on it plus what they've been putting into it, and go either buy a bigger house or go buy a house with a lot more land somewhere else. But people have been moving kind of into that area in Coeur d'Alene also, where it's kind of become a problem for them up there. Like the locals that have grown up there can't afford a place to stay. So pretty much everyone that's grown up there is having to move away. I think a lot of that speaks on the housing market just getting outrageously expensive, and that and the economies. I was looking at some charts the other day where the cost for the standard of living chart versus the average U.S. national average salary. Whereas kind of over the last few years, it's kind of been doing the same thing, kind of some swaps here and there, and over just the last couple of years has just started completely diverging, where the average U.S. wage hasn't really gone up significantly compared to what the cost of living and the cost of houses are. Both of those have gone up significantly, so we might end up in, this is getting a little political, but might end up in a recession at some point. I think the term for that's which I think at this point we are in a recession. I think we've kind of hit that definition of, and I forget what the actual definition of a recession is, but it's 2 cycles of a downward trend and
I agree with that. Yeah.
whatever the term is. But I'm pretty sure we've hit that. Now it's just a matter of what will happen with all that, because we've also got the election coming up.
Ooh,
so,
yeah.
And that'll be interesting.
Yes, sir. Well, how long are you in town for?
I'm flying out tomorrow.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well,
flying out at noon tomorrow.
Okay.
So, and I'll probably be back sometime around Christmas.
Cool. Yeah. That'd be
Yeah.
awesome. Well,
Yeah.
hope to have you back
Yeah,
at
hopefully.
some point. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been good, man.
Yes, sir. Oh, Fred, right there.
Yeah, right.
All right, man. Well, I appreciate you coming out
Absolutely. Thank
all
you.
this way.
Absolutely, it's been fun.
Yes,
Thank you
sir.
for having me.
Absolutely.